Do we even understand these wildfires?
The Dan York State of Mind program is brought to you in part by Lookout Rhode Island and Taco Comfort Solutions.
I mean, the force of nature just seems to be so awesomely terrifying that I think we look at it across the country. Some of us have folks, family there, so we get some anecdotal discussion about what's happening, but really we look at it from afar on television and think, whoa, and that's not us, and we don't get those, and there, but for the grace of God go I, and then our knowledge about it more or less stops right there, and we just kind of go, let's, say a prayer, thoughts and prayer cliches, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I'd really like to have an understanding, and we've got some expertise on it here this evening for you, so that's a cool thing. Stay with us. Nice to have you in on this. I think, remember, we record these shows daily in the early afternoon, but it feels like snow out there, and reportedly by the time we're seeing the show at 7:30, and certainly by midnight, we've got anywhere from 2 to 6 inches, depending on where you are. Soon to be washed away, I think. There's got to be one more round of golf in there before the holidays, don't you think? In the meantime, on a somber note to start the program, Sue Cherry's passed away. She was the quintessential First Lady. She was just class through and through. And of course, Governor Cherry was reelected. In his time, I think, it was a difficult time for Rhode Island because the country was really suffering through some really bad financial matters. But there's no doubt that Don Cherry offered a gravitas, and still does, that was, quite gubernatorial. Sue Cherry was very First Lady. She was terrific. I had, as many members of the media had, a chance to spend a lot of busy time with her, quiet time with her, and no matter what, there were a couple things that you also always come away with. Number one, she was on the issues. She knew exactly what was going on out there, and she had a thought about it. And every once in a while, she'd pop on the radio to talk to us about it. She was fiercely loyal to her husband. And I thought that was a really, really admirable trait. And thirdly, she never didn't ask about family, because at her root, she was just a good mom. God bless her. Condolences to the governor, the family, and to everybody who was close to Sue Cherry. We lost a good one. In the meantime, let's just mention that this is going to be the subject of conversation in part tomorrow night, and I think we're going to see more and more of this news. Facebook under duress now from the journalistic community as it kind of catches up to how the sausage is made, right? We are so behind what that company has done. Originally started to, hook you up with your old high school friends. We are so ignorant of the power and the problems that come along with Facebook, and I just ask you to pay more and more attention to this instrument that you have just kind of woven into your daily lives. This thing is a problem. This thing is, I'm not a big fan of regulation, but this thing needs to be much better understood, and I don't have the answers, but you should get informed on that. And lastly, coming home on a quasi-lighter note, this is kind of cool. Headline here, when I saw this, actually I was on the radio yesterday afternoon and I saw this and I started to get woozy in the studio. Disclosure, I'm not a big height guy. I need to put this package together.
Revealed for the first time on Wednesday, the Rhode Island Turnpike and Bridge Authority says these plans could enhance tourism and boost revenue for the state. They include an observation tower 400 feet above the water atop the Newport Pell Bridge. There are also bike and pedestrian paths being considered for the Pell, Mount Hope, and Jamestown bridges.
This is the first step in a long journey.
Eric Offenberg, the director of engineering, said the tower could be a top tourist attraction and the paths will enhance access to Jamestown and Aquidneck Island.
When you get up on the top of the towers, you can see Block Island, you can see Martha's Vineyard, you can see Providence, you can see Connecticut. The view is absolutely spectacular.
Conceptual renderings were unveiled of the potential projects, and officials say the preliminary costs for the bike and pedestrian paths range from $25 to $50 million.
It would probably take 3 to 4 years to cut the ribbon and start walking across that bridge.
Croft says bicycles and pedestrians will not be charged to cross the bridge.
It might take 3 or 4 years to cut the ribbon across the bridge. It might take me 3 or 4 decades. I'm a little, you know what it is? I'm told it's pre-anxiety. It's just something you ought to study if you're like a height or you've got some kind of phobia. That rendering, like going under the bridge and just, you're on your bicycle on a windy day and whoa! But there's no doubt that that would be an asset. I'm not so sure that I'd be on the tower, but I promise if they build it, I will come and I will travel it. I don't take medication, but I would probably borrow a Xanax and let's see if we can get that thing done. All right, in the meantime, hey, it's fun. It's something to look forward to, and certainly would be a tourist addition, no doubt. All right, the sell in Rhode Island, in part, is that we don't have fires. I mean, that's a really awful thing to say, but I mean, so far, who knows, with global warming conditions and the like, but this has been something that is no laughing matter. This is just awful. The death toll at press time was up to 56. And Dr. Budd is here to explain to me exactly what this is all about. You are an environmental scientist at Johnson & Wales. Welcome to the broadcast.
Thank you.
Nice to have you. You have family out there. You're a San Diegoan by birth?
Yes.
And you have family in Northern California?
Yes.
And how are they doing?
They've been told that they should get ready to evacuate, and they're trying to gather the means by which to do that. Like most residents, they have to, it comes down to logistics, pay for gas to leave, so they're finding a way to get out.
What's their geographical origin to?
They're south of Paradise in Oroville, California.
How far south?
Not sure exactly how far. Yeah, it's probably 100 miles or so.
So the evacuations are that expansive?
Yes.
Because of the smoke?
Yes. Yep. There is a lot of smoke and particulate matter in the air.
You're an environmental scientist. Are you a health expert to kind of talk? Do you have any idea about what the regional geographic impact is going to be of the smoke that goes along with these fires?
Well, for any living organism that respire and need oxygen, particulate matter is not good for those for any organism. So it's not good for life.
Yeah, well, I think we can figure that. The football game the other night, they were saying, oh, it's no big deal, but there was a layer. The Giants were playing San Francisco, and there was just a layer of what looked like smog or fog, but that was smoke that was really starting to permeate. What's the executive summary on what it is that they're dealing with out there? Do you have a go-to thought when people say, what's up with that?
With the fires in California?
Yeah, not the football game.
Not the football game.
Yeah.
Can't comment on that. But with the fires, we're seeing really unusual conditions and a really big exacerbated problem in California with the warm temperatures and the drought that really have fueled this fire. And also, global climate change does have its role to play, as well as human activity.
Well, it seems to me that they're talking about being an accident starts this, right? So a utility problem at the beginning, and we're not hearing much about that because once it starts, what is it? Mother Nature's taking over? That's the problem?
Yes, once the fire starts, it spreads quickly to dry vegetation, which is common in that area. In California, where this is happening, is a chaparral region in which you have really low underbrush, evergreen underbrush, and grasslands that under dry, warm conditions and drought, they lose their humidity and are just dry, so they act as tinder. And with California experiencing more drought, you get more of those dry vegetations, which any spark, lightning, human activities could ignite and cause massive destruction.
I mean, this is not something that we hear a lot about in terms of our emergency preparedness in the Northeast. We'll talk about a little bit more about what's happening in California and what we might ever have to be concerned about. Stay with us. Yeah, so there's a frequency to these fires now that we're really starting to pay attention to. Here was the latest we had earlier today.
It looks like a war zone. It is. It's the devastation that only fires of this kind could bring about.
California's governor, along with Interior Secretary Ryan Zinke, surveyed the destruction from the state's deadliest wildfire in Butte County.
The president has pledged full support to California.
Nearly the entire town of Paradise has been destroyed by the Camp Fire. In a lawsuit, about 24 victims are blaming Pacific Gas and Electric Company for starting the blaze.
The evidence is quite clear that this fire was caused by a PG&E transmission line, and PG&E needs to be held accountable.
PG&E acknowledged the legal battle, stating the safety of our customers and the communities we serve is our highest priority. Here in Southern California, the cause of the Woolsey fire also remains under investigation.
I've lived in Malibu for 45 years. I've been through all of these fires. They were not prepared.
Forrest Stewart was among a Malibu community expressing frustration over how the fire and evacuations were handled. Stewart credits his neighbor for saving his house.
He and his wife were 85, and they stood there all night and knocked out embers that hit my house.
Flare-ups like this west of Malibu are still cause for concern. The National Weather Service says rain could head to the burn areas next week, bringing threats of mudslides.
How about that? Mudslides on top of this? Why? Because the earth is soft?
Well, getting into the rainy season now for California. The winter is their rainy season. So after the fall season, the dry.
So the fire has got nothing to do with the mudslides?
No.
Okay. I just thought maybe there was some connection between the two, that the rain on top of the fires would be problematic. What are people in California supposed to do about this? I mean, what knowledge do people like you in this country bring to the preparedness, both the official preparedness and then the everyday person who just happens to live there? Is there something that we should be paying attention to in this country that we haven't been paying attention to?
We do have to pay attention to global climate conditions. Warmer places are getting warmer, drier places are getting drier, wetter places are getting wetter, and colder places are getting colder. And we're trying to predict really what's the best future global climate forecast and how to prepare ourselves. But we do see that the earth is warming. California experiencing more warmer days, July being the hottest they've ever had on record this summer. And with warm weather comes drought, dry vegetation. There are preparedness that we do take on as a community by trying to prepare ourselves for the fire season. In California, they clear underbrush, they prepare for fires. But when it breaks out and time of changing of season like California's in right now, with the high winds, it really exacerbates the problem. And this is why we're calling it wildfires. They're burning out of control, and these higher winds are making them really unpredictable.
Is this a trend that you see just increasing? And this, listen, there are people who just roll their eyes. Okay, another environmental wacko on the global warming thing, right? Mm-hmm. I'm not exactly sure how you can deny that we've had climate change. I'm just not exactly sure how you guys do that. We've had enough expertise here and on the radio, and that's infinitesimal compared to the expertise that's available out there to talk about this. Do you giggle at the people who just think that there has been no change, that this whole thing is a hoax? What's your response when you're out socially and people go, oh yeah, that's all. You know, well, Donald Trump was sitting here going, I don't believe you. What would you tell him?
Well, I don't giggle, but as a professor, it is my job to help communicate information and try to change people's minds in tradition, to not change it in the form that I want them to go in, but show them the evidence, make their own informed, intelligent decisions.
And the simple explanation is what? Other than what you just described to us, what is the proof? How do you explain in a soundbite or a headline or a bumper sticker or a paragraph the irrefutable notion that we're suffering through this? How do you do that?
Change is normal. The environment is changing. We now have the tools to predict long-term changes for the future.
Okay, so if global warming is normal, that might be more palatable.
But human activity that leads to global warming has exacerbated the current conditions.
Specifically what?
Human-led endeavors such as burning of fossil fuels. We know that's a main contributor to the greenhouse gases we're putting into the upper atmosphere. Our huge livestock and agricultural industry, what we're doing as humans and how we work with the environment, we are contributing to, in our part, the effect of global warming and making it more exacerbated and happening faster.
Specifically, the farm industry is doing what to the atmosphere?
If we look at animals that contribute to global warming, like cows, not to...
They fart.
Yes. They release gases that go into the upper atmosphere and trap heat. There is a lot of cows per person in the United States. I mean, there's a lot of animals everywhere, but they are part of our main livestock and our food system. So, yes, we're breeding an animal population to sustain our food industry.
People still think that's very funny, but that's what they do. They pass wind. The
scientists have.
You all right, Anita? She's not. She's not. Why? Mike's not over there. You all right, Jess? Over there?
Yeah.
What do we do? Give them gas X? I mean, what do we do? What do we do to these guys? I mean, obviously, it's what they take in.
Yeah.
Which is producing what they, emit.
Yes. Turn it into an asset. Trap that, compress it, and use that as gas fuel for our energy infrastructure. Farmers have, and I show my students sometimes, there are videos where farmers put balloon bags on their backs and let them fart into the balloon bag. And if you light it on fire, or light it, it will catch on fire. So there are some innovative ideas out there to work with these externalities.
Well, listen, it's high school humor, but the truth of the matter is that there's a science here. This is anatomical, this is biological, this is sort of mechanical. Is that a I'm not exactly sure when I decided to talk about fires on the show that I would get to this point, but
oh, you're with me. We always talk about
but is there a understood technology and a cost associated with it that the farm industry sees, is avoiding, needs financing for? Should there be government? I hate to talk about governmental, financial help, but we've been helping farmers in the economy for a long time. Is there a research and development plan, or is it just kind of an idea right now?
There are many innovators out there who are taking on that challenge, and they do need funding. And again, to make this more mainstream, to tell somebody to collect animal farts and use that for energy infrastructure sounds like something out of a comic book or just the funny pages, but could be useful. Again, anything that we can help mitigate our effects on the environment.
Well, that, not to stray too far away, but will that, when I have in-laws in Vermont, northern Vermont, and we ride up Route 22A, and not only is it, the only difference is it's as beautiful as Ireland, but it stinks to high heaven, and you just get adjusted to it. Is that what we're talking about? Will that stench go away if we're ever able to capture the gas?
No, nature stinks. Yes, I mean, to one person it stinks, to another person it smells like nature. So
well, it reminds you of where you are. I mean, you kind of go,
yes.
Okay, and then you kind of, but is the technology going to lessen that, or that will always remain?
No, that would always remain. Yeah.
Okay.
The not the gaseous matter, the solid matter, fecal matter will still
be there. This is like you teaching a class, and then we just got a little bit away, and you got to get back to the text. And when we come back, do we have? Hey, I thought that was interesting. And anytime you use the word, everyone just kind of loses it. When we come back and we talk about what we have to worry about here, stay with us. I mean, the videos are just devastating. Getting back to the core conversation here. East Coast worries about these kinds of things?
No, not in the near future.
Because
we don't have the Mediterranean type of climate that California has. We have more of a temperate New England, cool, warm environment.
Even in the hot summer?
Even in the hot summer, it's still nothing as bad as a Mediterranean type environment like California.
So you know, we all know when you take a trip to California that the weather feels differently, but is there a physiological difference between being in California or being in the Northeast that you feel on a long-term basis? I've never been in California for more than a couple of weeks at a time, so you know, I remember when I went to Colorado for the first time, to Denver for the first time, it was day 2, and I was like, oh, I can feel that. That's the only time I've ever felt physically different. Do we feel physically different in the two places?
No, we're both sea level.
Okay. So what happens to the Californian that they have to incorporate? Do you know if there's enough education and understanding, you know, amidst the population there about how to prevent these? This is now becoming part of their daily worry, certainly in Northern California, correct?
Yes, well, Californians do learn how to live with fire, in that they know they're in a region where there is infrequent fires. And this biome is adapted and has evolved to fires, especially the animals and plant life there.
Biome meaning?
The region of space and time in which you find organisms and populations living in the environment.
Well, we're always, you know, people who camp are always careful about their campfires and the like. I mean, you can still cause a fire in a forest here, but we're not going to see wildfires, is the point, right?
Yeah.
If they brought you to the table, Professor, to say, look, I need your big idea, what is your big, it might be cows. And you know what, that might be the answer. But do you have a big idea as to how we can quell this problem?
Really invest in our infrastructure that we have to manage the forest and also our first responders. Those are the best two methods to make sure that we are equipped to handle forest and grassland chaparral fires, and that people are educated and aware.
Do you have any understanding? I mean, you're living here, you're a former California. I mean, do you think the fire industry has its proper grip, or are they undermanned, under-resourced, and undereducated? Are they on top of their game there?
They're on top of their game, but if we're going to predict that this may become the new norm, maybe some reinvestment in the number of individuals and also the technologies, updating the technology of how to combat fires, especially as urban areas sprawl into the wildlands.
What do you think the timeline is for things to get back to normal after this fire, where people can reside and not worry about breathing and all that kind of thing?
For nature, it happens fairly quickly. Plants do propagate shortly after a fire, but to come back and rebuild your house after fire will take time.
What about, you know, mind and body and people with respiratory and all those kinds of things? It's going to be a while.
It's going to take a while.
How long does the smoke stick around?
The smoke will stick around in the upper atmosphere shortly after the fire, but it is taken up by the trade winds and brought elsewhere.
And lastly, what will be the expanse of the impact at the end, geographically? How far through this country are we going to experience it?
Right now, unknown. It's twice as large now as it was last year. It just depends on how much dry vegetation we can identify and map within the summer months. We can make better predictions of where fires may break out.
It's a fascinating field of study. Appreciate your perspective. Thanks. Good luck to your family. Hope they do okay.
Thank you.
Final word and we come back. Important show tomorrow. There's still some cow humor going on, another humor. That's a fun place to work. Listen, tomorrow night, Timothy Edgar returns, our cybersecurity expert and author of the book Snowden, and all the stuff that you should be learning from that episode. There's lots of things in technology and security that are in the news, including, but not limited to, Melania, very upset at her national security assistant, Donald, getting this from her, it seems. We'll see you on the radio at 3. Be careful in the weather. It should be better by the morning. Bye.